Satisfactory is one of the most popular factory games out there, so you probably don't need me to tell you that it's a pretty decent game. However, having played it from start to end, including all achievements after its full release, I do not think this game is for everyone, even if you like factory games. So, this review is intended to help you decide if you should be playing Satisfactory. Let's start with the most obvious difference between Satisfactory and many other factory games. You play from a first-person perspective. Many other factory games, including massively popular games like Dyson Sphere Program and Factorio, have you playing from a top-down perspective, with factories mostly being built in a two-dimensional plane. There's a good reason for that, because it makes organization and keeping track of everything a lot easier compared to literally walking between your machines trying to figure out why that one belt is not getting enough resources. Building a factory in Satisfactory therefore is a lot more work than in most factory games, especially if you want to keep it optimized and neat looking. Is that a bad thing? Well, it kinda depends. I definitely burned out on the game a few times during early access while trying to build a factory because it turned out to be way more work than I anticipated, turning kind of the gameplay into a slog at some point. That actually led me to make my recent masterclass series meant to help players to stay on track and keep individual projects somewhat condensed to avoid that type of burnout. But at the same time, the fact that you can literally walk through your factories and design them in whatever way you want visually is massively appealing to a lot of people. You can pretty much combine playing an engineer and an architect in this game in a way that very few other games let you do. Combined with the fact that the game looks absolutely stunning, I wouldn't be surprised if some players out there have like posters on their walls made out of in-game screenshots of things they've built and that they're quite honestly proud of. This first-person perspective also means you will want to design your factories in a more realistic way, using walkways, doors, etc., rather than just packing all machines together as closely as you can manage. You do unlock a hover pack in the second half of the game that lets you fly around while building your factories as long as you stay near a power source, which helps to address the first-person issue that I just described. Just keep in mind that you'll be dozens of hours into the game at this point already, and things like connecting belts and power lines in a 3D factory can still take you some time, especially if you embrace the verticality in this game, as you will have multiple floors of production with items traveling between them. To help address the time it takes to build factories, the game does come with the option to make blueprints. This definitely makes building larger factories easier, and having played the game before this was added, I can honestly say that having it in the game now is a massive improvement. That said, the blueprint system in this game is not without its own problems. You make blueprints in the Blueprint Designer, which is a building with limited space, meaning you'll have to design building blocks rather than fully functional factories that you can then copy and paste. And sure, you get larger versions of the Blueprint Designer unlocked as you go, but the larger version actually unlocks pretty much as you finish the game and is still pretty limited, so it doesn't really solve all that much. However, my main gripe with the blueprint system isn't that you have limited space, it is that you need to design your building blocks in the actual machine. So you can't just copy some part of your factory that you really like for later use, nope. You'll have to replicate it in the machine first before you can use it anywhere else. And because you cannot actually attach your build in the designer to anything outside of the box, you can't test your build until you place it down either, leading to some potentially annoying iterations to perfect a more complex design. Anyway, all those remarks aside, the building block type of approach does have a few appeals. For example, it makes mixing and matching your blueprints relatively easy, and designing your blueprints in such a way that you can stack and snap them together very easily becomes a nice puzzle in itself. In short, you're either going to love the system or hate it. The first-person perspective also enhances the feeling of scale. For example, the game includes things like trucks and trains to help you transport your items around the map. In most factory games, vehicles are fun, but they don't really bring a feeling of awe unless you have dozens of them driving or flying around. In Satisfactory, however, seeing your trains and trucks drive by just feels awesome, just because they're like huge things moving around your map. Not to mention the fact that you can literally design entire road systems to bring the reality feeling of all of this alive as well. Honestly, even just building power lines and bridges feels great, so there's definitely a payoff to all of this as well. Speaking of which, exploring in Satisfactory during your first playthroughs is very rewarding as well. There are collectibles around the map that you can use to improve your factory, and because you are in first person, getting up on cliffs or down in caves is a true challenge, not to mention the fact that the local flora and fauna will try to chase you off while doing so. Getting on top of a cliff, finding valuable resources, and getting an awesome view of your factory is extremely, well, satisfactory. Now, for those of you that don't consider getting mauled to death by creatures in the factory game sounds appealing, don't worry, you can actually turn them into harmless little pets with a single game setting option. The game even allows you to turn spiders into kittens, which is a good thing, because the spiders in this game are probably the most terrifying I've ever seen in any game. Even horror games should probably take some notes out of that. If you want a good Halloween experience, just go exploring some caves with hostile creatures enabled. Other than scouting for new resources and items, the exploration also comes with some story elements that are honestly quite entertaining and mysterious enough to make me want to keep exploring for more. The story, however, never really seems to reach a conclusion though, so I don't know, don't expect a groundbreaking revelation or anything like that, but it's a nice little addition to the game. Satisfactory also includes a virtual assistant that will comment on your progress every time you unlock a new technology or complete an objective, and also interacts with the story elements. Honestly, the dialogue is often extremely funny and well done. Later in the game, traveling around the map can get a little tedious at some point because all those cliffs and canyons keep getting in the way. But I would say it's only a minor inconvenience as you unlock things like parachutes and jetpacks as you progress to make that easier and easier. This holds especially true thanks to the storage system that the full release added to the game that, with a little setup, allows you to draw from resources you have available anywhere on the map. So at the very least you won't find yourself backtracking a few dozen times just because you didn't bring enough concrete. Something that used to be the bane of my existence in the early access version of the game, but that has now become a non-issue to the game in its full release. Zooming out a little bit, the difficulty of the game is very well done. The first few stages of the game are relatively straightforward, but the complexity increases as you go and continues to challenge you in a way that I think will appeal to most people playing these type of games. You'll find yourself scratching your head a few times to figure out why something isn't working, and you may even break out a spreadsheet or two, but I would say those are good things. The game also gives you a lot of value for its price. A single playthrough will easily take you more than 100 hours to complete, even if you just stick to the main objectives. And even though the map is fixed and will be the same every time you play, it is so massive that starting out in a different area will give you a totally different play experience. Add to that the designing options that you have and you can potentially spend hundreds of hours in this game without getting bored. I mean, I once spent 12 hours designing an early game power facility and I don't regret a thing. That said, you could argue that the length of the game is a potential downside, since it's a pretty hefty commitment if you actually want to complete the entire game, while still having time left for other games, but that's completely up to you. For those of you that care about achievements, I really enjoyed the fact that most of the achievements can be obtained by simply playing the game as intended. There are just a few achievements that require you to do things that aren't directly tied to things you would be doing anyway, and even those are not majorly time consuming, but more like fun little Easter eggs like I think most of those achievements should be. So in short, this is a gorgeous game that has clearly been developed with love and care and provides a ton of value for its price. However, there are a few things that might turn you off from the game, and I hope this review has helped you decide if those will be deal breakers for you. Also, let me know in the comments if you have any questions. If you like games like this, don't forget to subscribe to this channel because I cover both reviews and guides within this genre. If you're still here, you're awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.